Head across and touch base with Shireen now. I believe she is with the top leadership at CII. Shireen, over to you.
Well, that is right. 30 minutes to go for the Finance Minister to present the Union Budget, and I am joined by the top brass of the Confederation of Indian Industry here in the capital. Gentlemen, appreciate you joining us here on the program. Sanjiv Puri, you know, the big message with the economic survey threw up was, we have carried the baton so far, we're giving the baton to private sector, and now it is your turn to deliver on the corporate profitability that you're sitting on. Are the animal spirits now set for release and set for being unleashed?
I think the animal spirit or the spirit of entrepreneurship in India has always been very strong. And that's also reflected in the growth of the private, capex, which is higher than the pre-COVID levels. So it is actually on good footing, good momentum. And broadly, let me say it was good to see what the economic survey had to say about the health of the economy, and the mood in the industry is also optimistic. And we within CII actually look at this as a partnership, for the economic transformation. So there's a role that industry has, and industry is committed to play that role. And there are a lot of good work on policy that has happened, particularly at the central level. I think there is more that needs to be done, and a lot of that actually is closer to at the state levels.
Yeah.
These will unlock and bring in more productivity and unlock more opportunities in the economy. So we do need to deal with these issues on providing impetus to some labor-intensive sectors, looking at sectors on agriculture, rural.
So do you expect more PLI schemes for labor-intensive sectors? Do you expect targeted incentives for any specific industry?
So we would look at more towards what we call the ELI, that is more for employment-intensive industries. So which has something linked to employment and something linked to the outcome in the industry. That's where we would look at, and a lot more focus on rural.
Lot more focus on rural. I'll come back to what specifically you believe that the budget can do as far as rural is concerned. Rajiv, Memani, from a tax point of view, I think the big concern is, will they do anything as far as capital gains is concerned? Do you believe they will, or unlikely this time around?
No, I think they will do something. Whether that will lead to... So you can do by changing rates of taxes, or you can change tenure.
Yeah.
So my sense is that something they will do, because I think they have to find a way to simplify.
What would your bet be, on the rate or the tenure?
My bet will be on the tenure.
On the tenure?
Yeah, that's what I think.
So bring in parity with equities?
Maybe go the other way. Maybe bring in parity with what long-term capital gains is for most category of assets, to put that on the same page.
And if that were to happen, and this is your bet at this point in time, of course, we will see how the markets react to that. But, from a short-term perspective, you think that in terms of inflows, etc., what would the impact be?
Yeah, there will be impact on valuations, for sure. I think there will be some impact on valuations. I don't think there will be any impact on flows. But yes, there will be a short-term impact on valuations.
For the salaried class, the expectation again is that this is going to be the budget that finally delivers on that long-anticipated move. Do you believe that the budget is likely to do that?
Yeah, I think they probably, given the fact that we have had inflation to the extent that we've had, and it's eating into the growth of consumption, I would say at the lower levels of income, if they can add to the rebate. So right now, if you add to the rebate up to 7 lakhs under the new regime, you don't have to pay taxes. My guess is they may want to add something to that. And also they may want people to migrate from the old to the new, which they've not been that successful at that. So they can do that.
So more sweeteners then to make that transition happen, to make the pivot happen?
Yeah, which is maybe increase the rebate. I think that's something that they should be doing.
Vinayak Bucketwala Chatterjee, let me come to you now. I've rechristened you. So how leaky are the buckets this time around, or do you believe that we could see more?
The expectation buckets are always robust. What we will have to see is what they deliver. But I want to step back a little and pick up two very strong messages from the economic survey. The first, Shireen, and these are two important cues. One is, it says bottoms-up growth.
Yeah.
And the second thing it says, as you rightly asked, Sanjiv, is private sector now has to step up to the game. Now, the question is, the economic survey is cleared by the top echelons of the political bureaucratic class. Now, is this signaling a shift in economic thinking and strategy from the 2014 onwards, public expenditure-led growth, pump priming the economy? Is this signaling a shift in economic thinking, or setting the stage for saying we're going to now slowly start reducing public expenditure and have bottoms-up growth from MSMEs, agri, and get private sector to pick up the pace both in infra and the others. So these are two important signals.
Does that worry you? Does that concern you?
It does. It worries me to the extent that moves like these require a transition time of almost 3 to 5 years. And if we are using this logic to step back on public expenditure, then I'm afraid there's going to be a dip in the GDP, because the new paradigm will take time to shift to bottoms-up growth. Not easy, with all the problems of ease of doing business and all the problems of PPP in infra. And then if you're going to step down the public expenditure from the last few years of 25-30% increase in outlays, I'm afraid the strategy may see a short-term dip.
So, when we spoke earlier, your expectation was that they would do much better in terms of the interim budget number. You said interim budget number doesn't matter. Public capex will be significantly higher than the 11.11 lakh crore rupees. Today, do you still hold that view?
Of course I do, because the maths is very clear. If you do not have, the last few years have seen 25 to 30% outlays in public expenditure. There is clear evidence that that has led to the multiples, that has led to the economic growth that we are all very happy about. Now, you cut back on public expenditure, then you have to be mentally prepared for a small dip in economic growth, small or large. So I am expecting, or at least I hope, that the FM would carry on the tradition of a 25-30% growth, which means 30% over the last full year. Forget the interim budget, arithmetical exercise, holding exercise, and position a 13 lakh crore across the infrastructure sector is my hope and my expectation. Let's see. 13
lakh crore, we will watch for that number. Chandrajit, Banerjee, you look like you've got the speech right in front of you. You have your own speech ready for us, is it? What does it say?
No, I think taking from what Vinayak said, that what the economic survey has been pretty conservatively optimistic about growth. I think we need to have growth, and we see clearly that India can...
significantly lower than the CII.
That's right. We would look at an 8% growth, and we see that those tailwinds pretty much there. We see, if you look at what the economic survey says on CAD, the deficit really having come down, inflation having been tamed, and if we can really keep working on the capex and the ease of doing business, there is also good, if you really look at services exports, that is also brightened up. So we do see a possibility of higher growth, and therefore importance in capex, and the capex quality, I would think, be more towards rural, towards irrigation and all of that. That's going to be critical, but that has been missing. The piece which has been missing is the states, and that is where we need both in terms of infra spend and capex, plus also reforms.
But the states have actually been spending. The states have been front-loading on capex spends as well. But Sanjiv Puri, on the point that was being made there by CB, and you talked about the rural economy as well, do you believe that we're likely to see new schemes being announced, or better funding of existing schemes like NREGS, PM Awas, a higher installment as far as PM Kisan, etc. is concerned? What would the expectation be, and what do you believe will actually move the needle from a rural consumption perspective?
So, let's look at it in two buckets. Now that I'm sitting next to Vinayak.
Bucket business is infectious.
So first is that, the short term, and the other is more medium to long term, so that we actually are looking at a thriving rural economy. So, short term, I think, has to be dealt with by, one is, I think there is some amount of relief and stimulus is required by, can there be something more given by way of Manrega or, PM Kisan. So whilst we believe that the focus should be on capacity building, capital formation, empowering the economy, but a bit of this is required at this, given the current context. Second is, I think the having more infra spends in rural also will create non-farm jobs. So that's the second piece. Now, in addition to this, I think for medium and long term, what we do need to address is the issue of agriculture. It's expected to be better this year because, the weather forecast right now, it seems to be in a better position than last year. But on a consistent basis, how do we unlock the potential of agriculture, given that still, nearly half the workforce is there? And whilst we can take people away from agriculture, but it'll continue to be substantive.
Right.
So I think there are some good policy instruments that have been in play in the past, like farmer collectives, bringing digital technology, trying to bring the benefits of agri-tech, through things like Drone Didi. So we need to look at a system how we can scale this.
Okay.
The question is of really scaling it in magnitude.
Right.
And how do we create clusters of FPOs around dedicated crops, and how do we create an ecosystem of the ag tech players there so farming comes as a service. We need to launch the agri-tech, India's agri-stack, which is I believe in fairly advanced stage by the ministry now, so that we empower the rural economy, because these are the tools to provide the best practices to the agriculture sector.
Right.
And we need to also work on building resilience, because weather events are there to stay.
Yeah.
And there are some pathways available. Some research has to happen, some pathways are available. We need to work on that.
Yeah.
But what is also important is that, which has also been covered in the the economic survey, is there needs to be reform in this sector.
Yeah.
There need to be reform in this sector.
Removing the impediments for agriculture growth, I think that was a whole chapter in the survey.
Yeah. And one other point I want to make for medium term is really to empower the the youth in the rural sector to partake in other economic opportunities, is all about skilling and the social infrastructure. So given that we have better connectivity, physical and digital, can we create some integrated rural development hubs?
Okay.
And there will be participation from industry also there on skilling, etc.
That's the tripartite compact that the survey spoke of. But Rajiv, Memani, that's as far as agri is concerned. What about manufacturing? Do you believe that there will be course corrections, especially in terms of import duties where the inversions currently continue to exist? Also, FDI, while the survey did say that, look, it's getting even more challenging to draw in FDI, and we have started to see that decline showing up in numbers as well. What do you believe the budget is likely to signal on manufacturing specifically, more FDI in particular as well?
Yeah, I mean, if you actually go to the fundamental, I mean, if you take a very high-level view, Shireen, if you compare this with what happened in the vote on account, versus where we are today, the government has probably, depending on where they want to land up at, about 1 lakh or 1.5 lakh crore to spend.
Yeah.
Question is, where do they allocate the spending, and how do they tinker with taxes if they have to rebalance amongst different sort of levels? So if you look at that 1.5 lakh, I think a lot of that probably will go into rural income inequality, agri, that kind of stuff, given what we have seen. So insofar as manufacturing is concerned, my view is that, again, it will go towards trying to see how we can drive employment up. So, can they flex some on 80JJAA, some inverted customs duty, this thing. And to be fair, I think we're seeing some early success in some parts, especially in the EMS side, in the defense sector, the semiconductor commitments, the entire energy transition manufacturing. I think companies are taking the first steps. It takes time. It takes 2 to 3 years before these things gain for momentum. As far as FDI is concerned, FDI is a factor of a lot of things.
Yeah.
FDI is also a factor of what interest rate movements overseas are. And also a factor of what valuations in India are. So really there's not that much in the budget that they can do to but if interest rates start moderating outside, and a lot of the FDI blip that happened, if you actually analyze, was in the venture capital industry, because you had massive flows coming through which dried up. I think they may start picking up again. And as interest rates moderate, I think you may have more FDI coming through. And for the third thing, which is a longer bet, is for non-financial investors to identify big projects in India or to look at bigger acquisitions in India. It's still challenging.
It's still challenging.
So I think that it's not a budget issue, but
it's not a budget. It's a larger issue and a larger debate. How it's also history for Nirmala Sitharaman, 7th consecutive budget. She surprised us with a 56-minute budget when the expectation was that the interim budget would be much longer. From a legacy perspective, is there anything that you believe that she's going to throw in this budget to really establish the historic significance of it?
I think what we have seen glimpses of that in the economic survey, and one of the things that started happening, if I may say, is building trust between different stakeholders in the economy. So trusting industry to be a livelihood generator or from a creator of wealth, And therefore, and that can play a huge role both in enabling private sector participation, as well as taking the common man ahead in terms of participating in the economy through increased consumption and greater employment. I think that's going to be a significant direction which really take for the next 25 years.
In terms of direction, and the expectation is that the fiscal math is likely to be a continuation of what we saw in the interim budget, but perhaps a departure from things like privatization, perhaps a departure from things like strategic disinvestment, etc. I know that was part of the wish list, including a significant amount that you've pegged on asset monetization. Do you believe that there is appetite to see things like that, strategic disinvestment, privatization, or has industry tempered its expectations?
I think this is an area where I think industry has said that we should continue that path, and the government has also announced very clearly in the past a policy with respect to where they would stay invested and where they would not. We must recognize that there are challenges in doing this. These are not easy things to do, but I think the work on this should be on, and we should not lose focus on it, because these are, I think, important things to do.
Important things to do. So the baton being handed to industry. The question is now: are you ready to run? Vinayak, Chatterjee?
I think industry is always ready to run, but the other thing that industry needs very clear directions on across the board is that the economy is transiting from a fossil fuel economy to a green economy, and this transition comes with a lot of pain, a lot of fiscal and financial pain to all the players. So I'm expecting the budget to discuss this issue, and one of the expectations is that one does have insider knowledge that a bunch of multilateral development banks have actually volunteered to set up a green energy transition fund with government participation to put all the other cesses like a compensatory afforestation, coal cess, and etc. into it, and probably make a 10-15 lakh crore green energy transition fund. That's certainly an expectation to help everybody transit, the nation to transit.
So 13 lakh crore rupee capex number and a green energy transition fund perhaps will find their way in the budget. We will know soon enough. 15 minutes to go for the Finance Minister to present the speech. Sanjiv Puri, Rajiv, Memani, CB and Vinayak Bucketwala Chatterjee. Many thanks for joining us here from the CII CNBC-TV18 Budget Headquarters. There's a lot more. Guys, back to you with the markets.